Captain Robert Anderson had flown combat missions over the Persian Gulf and navigated Category 5 turbulence over the Atlantic, but he had never felt the blood drain from his face quite like this. He stood at the cockpit door, watching his lead flight attendant sneer at the tall, well-dressed man she was forcing onto the jet bridge. The passenger didn't scream. He didn't fight. He simply reached into his blazer pocket and calmly produced a leather wallet, flipping it open. The cabin lights caught the gold and blue enamel of the badge inside. Anderson froze. He didn't just recognize the badge, he recognized the man holding it. And he knew, with terrifying certainty, that his crew had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Dr. Adrian King adjusted the collar of his charcoal suit, the fabric feeling heavy against his skin. The air in the terminal of Chicago O'Hare International Airport was stale, recycled through vents that hadn't been cleaned enough, smelling of burnt coffee and anxiety. It was 10:45 p.m. Adrian was exhausted. Not the kind of tired that comes from a long jog or a bad night's sleep, but the bone-deep weariness that settles into your marrow after 26 hours of standing over an operating table. He had just successfully removed a glioblastoma from the brain of a 6-year-old girl at Northwestern Memorial. Her parents had cried on his shoulder less than 2 hours ago. He still felt the phantom pressure of the mother's grip on his forearm. He just wanted to get home to Washington, D.C. He wanted a scotch, a hot shower, and silence. He checked his watch, a vintage Omega, a gift from his late father. Boarding for Flight 492 to Reagan National was starting in 10 minutes. Adrian picked up his leather weekender bag. It was scuffed, well-traveled, and expensive, much like Adrian himself. He stood 6'3", a black man with broad shoulders and a neatly trimmed beard that was just starting to gray at the chin. He walked toward gate K-12, his gait steady despite his fatigue. He kept his head down, scrolling through post-op notes on his phone. He needed to send a final update to the chief of surgery before he went wheels up. As he approached the gate, he felt it. The shift in atmosphere. It was a sensation he had lived with for 45 years. A subtle change in air pressure that happened whenever he entered a space where people decided he didn't belong. He looked up. Standing behind the podium was a woman who looked like she had been chewing on lemons since the Reagan administration. Her name tag read Brenda. She had blonde hair sprayed into a helmet of immobility and eyes that scanned the waiting area with predatory suspicion. Adrian stepped into the priority lane. He held a first-class ticket, seat 1A. He always flew first class not for the champagne, but for the space to work and the sleep he desperately needed. "Excuse me," Brenda said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise like a serrated knife. She didn't look up from her computer screen at first, but her hand shot out, blocking his path. Adrian paused. "Yes?" Brenda looked up then. Her eyes raked over him, lingering on his sneakers. They were Balenciaga, comfortable for surgery, but casual. She looked at his hoodie cashmere, but still a hoodie which he wore under his blazer. "This is the priority lane," Brenda said, her tone dripping with a sugary condescension that was far more insulting than shouting. "Zone 1 only. Economy boarding starts in 20 minutes. You'll need to step back." Adrian didn't blink. He was used to this. He dealt with skeptical hospital administrators and arrogant insurance lobbyists daily. A gate agent was a minor variable. "I am in Zone 1, Adrian said calmly. He held out his phone, the QR code for his boarding pass bright on the screen. Brenda didn't scan it. She stared at him, her lips pursing into a thin, pale line. "Sir, I need you to step aside so the first-class passengers can board. Don't make me call security." A man behind Adrian cleared his throat. He was short, wearing a polo shirt that was too tight, with a face flushed pink likely from the airport bar. He sighed loudly, checking his watch. "Come on, buddy," the man muttered. "Wait your turn." Adrian turned slightly, offering the man a polite nod, before turning back to Brenda. He kept his voice low, his baritone smooth and controlled. "My name is Dr. King. I am in seat 1A. If you scan the pass, you will see that." Brenda scoffed. It was a short, sharp sound. "Doctor, you look more like a..." She trailed off, letting the unspoken racial slur hang heavy in the air between them. She snatched the phone from his hand, her nails clicking against the glass. She held it under the scanner aggressively, as if she were trying to break the machine. Beep. Green light. The machine chirped happily. Brenda stared at the screen. She blinked. The screen displayed. "King, Adrian, Seat 1A. Millage plus Premier 1K. She didn't apologize. She didn't smile. She shoved the phone back at him, almost dropping it. Bored, she snapped, looking past him to the pink-faced man. Welcome aboard, Mr. Henderson. So sorry for the delay. Adrian took his phone. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. He walked down the jet bridge, the hollow thud of his footsteps echoing against the metal walls. He knew this wasn't over. He could feel Brenda's eyes burning a hole in the back of his blazer. He just didn't know that Brenda was about to make the flight a living hell. The cabin of the Boeing 737 was cool and bathed in blue LED mood lighting. Adrian stepped onto the plane, nodding to the junior flight attendant at the door, a young woman with a nervous smile named Sarah. Welcome aboard, Mr. King, Sarah said, checking his pass. Dr. King, he corrected gently, offering a tired smile. Good evening. Oh, sorry. Dr. King. Seat 1A, right here on your left. Adrian stowed his weekender bag in the overhead bin. He took his seat by the window, sinking into the wide leather chair. He exhaled, a long, shuddering breath. He closed his eyes for a moment, visualizing the anatomy of the brain he had been working on all day, decompressing. He took out his iPad and a thick stack of medical files, physical copies he preferred to annotate by hand. The files were stamped Confidential and Department of Defense. Adrian wasn't just a neurosurgeon. He was a civilian consultant for the Walter Reed National Military Medical Center. He held a clearance level that most senators didn't have. He was currently reviewing the case of a high-ranking general who had suffered a traumatic brain injury during a training exercise. He put his headphones on noise-canceling Boses and opened the file. The plane began to fill up. The pink-faced man, Mr. Henderson, sat across the aisle in 1B. He ordered a double gin and tonic before the plane even pushed back. Then Brenda boarded. She marched onto the plane like a general inspecting the front lines. She carried the manifest on a clipboard, hugging it to her chest. She whispered something to Sarah, the junior attendant. Sarah looked at Adrian, then back at Brenda, shaking her head slightly. Brenda's eyes narrowed. She walked up the aisle to first class. She stopped at row 1. Sir, she said. Adrian didn't hear her. He was deep in the file, examining an MRI scan of a frontal lobe. Brenda reached out and tapped him on the shoulder hard. Adrian jumped slightly, sliding his headphones off. Yes? I need to see your ticket again, Brenda said loudly. The cabin was quieting down as the doors were preparing to close. Her voice carried back to row 5. I showed it to you at the gate, Adrian said, his patience thinning. There was a glitch in the system, Brenda lied. Her face was impassive. I need to verify you are actually supposed to be in this seat. We have a standby passenger for first class, and I believe there's been a duplicate booking. Mr. Henderson in 1B chuckled, swirling his ice cubes. Duplicate booking, huh? Sounds like you tried to pull a fast one, pal. Adrian ignored him. He unlocked his phone and brought up the boarding pass again. Brenda leaned in, not looking at the phone, but peering at the documents on his lap. What is that? She asked, pointing a manicured finger at the file stamped Department of Defense. Work, Adrian said, closing the folder. Is there a problem with my ticket? You're making people uncomfortable, Brenda said. It was a pivot so fast it was almost impressive. Adrian looked around. Who? Who am I making uncomfortable? Me, Brenda said, her voice dropping to a hiss. You're acting suspicious. You're guarding those papers like they're plans for something, and you were aggressive at the gate. Aggressive? Adrian laughed, a dry, humorless sound. I stood still. You refused to let me board. Don't raise your voice at me, Brenda snapped, straightening up. She looked toward the economy cabin, performing for the audience. Sir, I am going to ask you to put your bag under the seat in front of you. I'm in the bulkhead, Adrian said, pointing to the wall in front of him. There is no seat in front of me. Regulations state I have to use the overhead bin. The bin is full, Brenda said. It wasn't when I put my bag in it. Brenda reached up, popped the bin open, and yanked Adrian's leather bag out. She dropped it on his lap. It was heavy. It hit his thighs with a thud. We need this space for other passengers, she said. You'll have to gate check this. This contains medical equipment, Adrian said, his voice turning icy. It contains sensitive instruments that cannot be checked. Federal aviation law allows me to keep this with me. I don't care what you think the law is, Brenda said. You are being non-compliant. Give me the bag, or you're getting off. The plane fell silent. Even Mr. Henderson stopped drinking his gin. Adrian looked at the bag on his lap. Inside, nestled in protective foam, was a set of custom surgical loops and a prototype neural interface drive he was transporting to D.C. for the consultation. The drive alone was worth $2 million. He looked at Brenda. He saw the glint in her eyes. She wanted a fight. She wanted him to yell, to curse, to give her a reason to press the panic button. He realized then that this wasn't about bag space. It was about power. She felt small, and making him small made her feel big. I will not check the bag, Adrian said, his voice dead calm. But if you can find space in a closet, I am happy to let you stow it there. Brenda stared at him. She was losing control of the narrative. She grabbed the bag. I'll see what I can do, she sneered. She marched to the front galley and shoved the bag into a coat closet, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame. She returned to the aisle. Phone off, now. We are still at the gate, Adrian said. The door is open. I said, phone off, Brenda shouted. At that moment, a passenger from row 3 stood up. It was a man named Greg Chadwick. He was wearing a camouflage baseball cap and a t-shirt with a political slogan on it. Hey, Chadwick yelled, just listen to her. Why do you people always have to cause trouble? Adrian turned in his seat to look at Chadwick. Excuse me? You heard me, Chadwick said, emboldened by Brenda's hostility. You're sitting there looking sketchy, hiding your papers, arguing with the flight crew. We all want to get home. Stop holding us up. I am not holding anyone up, Adrian said. I am sitting in my assigned seat. You look like a thug. Chadwick spat. How can you afford that seat anyway? Dealing? Gasps rippled through the cabin. Sarah, the junior flight attendant, looked horrified. She stepped forward. Sir, please sit down, she said to Chadwick. No, I want him off. Chadwick pointed a finger at Adrian. He's making me feel unsafe. I saw him texting in Arabic or something. Adrian looked at his phone. He had been texting his mother. In English. Brenda stepped in. But instead of reprimanding Chadwick, she turned to Adrian. See, Brenda said, gesturing to the angry man. You are inciting a disturbance. You are disrupting the peace of this flight. He just used a racial slur, Adrian said, his voice tightening. And you are blaming me? I didn't hear a slur, Brenda lied smoothly. I hear a passenger who is afraid because of your aggressive behavior. She clicked the radio on her shoulder. Captain, we have a situation in 1A, level 2, disturbance. I need you to come out here. Adrian sat back. He felt his heart rate climb, not out of fear, but out of a profound, simmering rage. He took a deep breath. Inhale for 4. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. He thought of the operating room, the calm amidst the blood. He reached into his inner blazer pocket. He's got a gun, Chadwick screamed, ducking behind the seat. Hands, Brenda shrieked, jumping back. Let me see your hands. Pandemonium broke out. People in economy started screaming. Mr. Henderson spilled his gin. Adrian froze. He moved his hand very slowly. He withdrew a slim leather wallet. It is a wallet, Adrian said, holding it up. I am getting my identification. The cockpit door buzzed and clicked open. Captain Robert Bob Anderson stepped out. He was a large man, 55 years old, with silver hair and the weary look of a man who just wanted to fly the plane, not babysit adults. He saw the chaos. He saw Chadwick cowering, Brenda hyperventilating, and the black man in 1A sitting perfectly still, holding a wallet. What the hell is going on? Anderson barked. He threatened us, Brenda yelled, pointing at Adrian. He's got a weapon. He was reading blueprints and refused to give up his bag, and now he's reaching for something. Anderson looked at Adrian. He looked at the weapon, the wallet. Get him off my plane, Brenda said, her voice shaking with fake terror. Captain, I refuse to fly with him. He is a security threat. I want him arrested. Anderson looked at Brenda, then back at Adrian. He stepped closer to 1A. Sir, Anderson said, his voice authoritative but not shouting, I need you to step out of the seat. Adrian looked the captain in the eye. He saw a man who was reasonable, a man who respected hierarchy. Captain, Adrian said, I am a calm passenger. I have been harassed since I arrived at the gate. I am a neurosurgeon. and I am currently traveling on official orders. Get him off, Chadwick yelled from row 3. He's a terrorist. Quiet, Anderson roared at the passengers. He turned back to Adrian. Sir, step into the galley. We need to clear this up. Adrian unbuckled his seatbelt. He stood up. He towered over Brenda. She flinched, expecting a blow. He ignored her completely. He walked into the galley, the small space by the cockpit door. Anderson followed him. Brenda followed, eager to see the handcuffs. Pilot, Brenda said, call the police. I want him charged with assault. He didn't touch you, Brenda. Sarah, the junior attendant, piped up from the corner, her voice trembling. He didn't do anything. Shut up, Sarah, Brenda snapped. You're new. You don't know the signs. Anderson looked at Adrian. Sir, what is going on? What were you reaching for? I was reaching for this, Adrian said. He flipped the wallet open. The light from the galley hit the badge. It wasn't a police badge. It was a heavy, gold medallion set in blue enamel. It bore the seal of the President of the United States. Above it, the words, White House Medical Unit, Specialist Consultant. Below it, Level 5 clearance. Next to the badge was an ID card. It featured Adrian's face, a holographic chip, and a rank. Rear Admiral, Civilian Equivalent, DOD. Captain Anderson looked at the badge. He blinked. He leaned in closer. He looked at the name, Dr. Adrian King. Then, the captain's eyes widened. He looked up at Adrian's face, really looking at him for the first time. Dr. King? Anderson said, his voice dropping to a whisper. Dr. Adrian King? The neurosurgeon from Northwestern? Yes, Adrian said. Anderson's face went pale. He swallowed hard. Sir, you operated on General McAllister last year, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I did, Adrian said calmly. I'm on my way to D.C. now to consult on a case for his staff. I have a meeting at the Pentagon in 4 hours. The silence in the galley was deafening. The only sound was the hum of the auxiliary power unit. Anderson slowly turned his head to look at Brenda. Brenda was smiling triumphantly. She hadn't seen the badge clearly. She thought the captain was interrogating him. Well? She demanded. Are the police on their way? Captain Anderson looked at Brenda with an expression of pure, unadulterated fury. No, Anderson said softly. But someone is leaving this plane. Brenda's smile was a grotesque mask of self-assurance. She smoothed her skirt, looking from the captain to the police officers who she assumed were just moments away from storming the jet bridge. She had played this game a dozen times in her 30-year career. Identify the outlier, provoke a reaction, claim safety concerns, and watch the system crush the individual. It was her power trip, her way of exerting control in a life that felt increasingly small. Well, Captain? Brenda pressed, her voice shrill. I want him blacklisted. I want his frequent flyer account terminated. He threatened a crew member. That is a federal offense. Captain Anderson didn't look at her. He was still staring at the badge in Dr. Adrian King's hand. The gold enamel seemed to suck all the oxygen out of the tiny galley. Anderson looked up, his face gray. He turned to Adrian. Dr. King, he began, his voice cracking slightly. He cleared his throat and tried again, squaring his shoulders, reverting to the discipline of his military days. Dr. King, on behalf of the flight deck, I need to verify something. The consultation you are heading to, is it time sensitive? Extremely, Adrian replied, his voice a low rumble. I am due at the National Military Medical Center at 0600 hours to prep for a procedure that determines if a man walks again or spends the rest of his life in a wheelchair. A man who has served this country with more honor than this entire cabin combined. Brenda rolled her eyes. Oh, please. He's lying, Bob. Look at him. He probably bought that badge online. You know, they sell fake FBI wallets on eBay. Captain Anderson spun on his heel. The movement was so sudden, so violent in its speed, that Brenda actually took a step back, hitting her spine against the drink carts. Silence, Anderson roared. The sound boom in the small galley was deafening. Even the passengers in the first few rows of first class jumped. Bob? Brenda whispered, her voice trembling. She had never, in 20 years of flying with him, seen him raise his voice. You will not speak another word, Anderson hissed, pointing a finger inches from her face. You have just accused a senior civilian officer of the Department of Defense of terrorism. You have harassed a man holding level 5 clearance. Do you have any idea what you have done? Brenda blinked, her mouth opening and closing like a fish on a dock. He was looking suspicious. He had a hoodie. He wouldn't check his bag. His bag contains classified medical technology, Anderson said, his voice shaking with suppressed rage. Technology that is now at risk because you decided to play gatekeeper. Anderson turned back to Adrian. He stood at attention. Dr. King, my name is Captain Robert Anderson. I flew F-18 seconds in the Gulf. I know what that badge means. I know who you are. And I am formally apologizing for the conduct of my lead flight attendant. Adrian looked at the captain. The anger in his chest hadn't dissipated, but it had cooled into something sharp and usable. Captain Anderson, I appreciate your service. But an apology does not fix the fact that I have been racially profiled, publicly humiliated, and labeled a security threat in front of 150 people. No, sir. It doesn't, Anderson agreed. And we are going to fix that right now. Anderson grabbed the interphone, the PA system handset. He didn't just speak to the galley. He keyed the mic for the entire plane. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Anderson's voice boomed through the overhead speakers, echoing in the silent, tension-filled cabin. We have a delay. We have a security situation that needs to be resolved immediately. In row 3, Greg Chadwick, the man in the camo hat, fist pumped. Yeah, get him off, he shouted. USA! USA! However, the captain continued, his voice turning into cold steel. The security threat is not the passenger in 1A. The cabin went deadly silent. Chadwick's hand froze in the air. The threat comes from individuals interfering with the duties of a federal medical officer, Anderson said. I am declaring an emergency removal. Not of Dr. King, but of the passengers and crew who have disrupted this flight. Brenda's face went white. She grabbed the captain's arm. Bob, you can't be serious. You can't kick me off. I'm the lead. We can't fly without me. You'll cancel the flight. Anderson looked at her with eyes devoid of sympathy. I would rather cancel this flight and ground this plane for a week than fly another mile with you on my crew, Brenda. You are relieved of duty. Get your things. You can't do this, Brenda shrieked. I'm calling the union. I'm calling the chief pilot. Call them, Anderson said. But do it from the terminal, because you are leaving my aircraft. At that moment, the flashing red and blue lights of police cruisers washed over the cabin walls through the porthole windows. The heavy thud of boots hit the jet bridge. The police are here, Adrian noted dryly. Good, Anderson said. I called them. 3 officers from the Chicago Police Department airport unit boarded the plane. They were big men, wearing tactical vests, their radios squawking with static. The lead officer, Sergeant Miller, scanned the galley. He saw the crying flight attendant, the stoic black man in the suit, and the furious captain. Miller naturally gravitated toward Brenda. Ma'am? You made the call about a disturbance? Yes, Brenda sobbed, pointing a shaking finger at Adrian. He's refusing to follow crew instructions. He's aggressive. He has a weapon in his pocket. Sergeant Miller turned to Adrian, his hand resting instinctively near his holster. Sir, I'm going to need you to step away from the cockpit and keep your hands where I can see them. Adrian didn't move. He didn't have to. Captain Anderson stepped physically between the police officer and Adrian. Officer, stand down, Anderson ordered. Miller paused, confused. Captain? We got a call about a level 2 threat in seat 1A. The report was false, Anderson said firmly. The flight attendant made a fraudulent report. The gentleman you are looking at is Dr. Adrian King, a high-ranking consultant for the Pentagon. He is the victim here. Miller looked at Adrian, then at the badge still visible in the wallet Adrian held. Miller recognized the seal. He stiffened. Then why are we here, Captain? Miller asked. I need you to remove a passenger in row 3, Anderson said. Seat 3C, a Mr. Gregory Chadwick. He has been inciting a riot, using hate speech, and threatening a federal officer. I want him arrested for interference with a flight crew. And, Anderson added, pointing at Brenda, I need you to escort this flight attendant off the plane. She has been relieved of duty for gross misconduct and harassment. She is refusing to deplane voluntarily. Brenda gasped. I am not refusing. I am. I am the victim. Officer, Adrian spoke up for the first time. His voice was calm, authoritative, and carried the weight of a man who held lives in his hands daily. If you check the phone of the young lady in row 4, I believe you will find a video recording of the entire incident. It will corroborate that this woman and the man in row 3 initiated the aggression. Every head turned to row 4. A teenage girl with purple hair was holding her iPhone up. She nodded vigorously. I got it all, she said. I've been live streaming to TikTok for 10 minutes. There are 40,000 people watching right now. Brenda's knees gave out. She slumped against the galley wall. 40,000 people. I didn't mean, Brenda stammered. Let's go, ma'am, Officer Miller said, his tone shifting from investigative to command. He gestured to his partner. Escort her off. No, my bag, my seniority, Brenda wailed as the junior officer took her by the elbow. It wasn't rough, but it was firm. The humiliation was absolute. She was marched past Dr. King, forced to look at the man she had deemed suspicious. He didn't look at her. He was looking at his watch. Then, the police moved into the cabin. They walked past first class, past Mr. Henderson, who was now pretending to be asleep, and stopped at row 3. Mr. Chadwick? Sergeant Miller asked. Chadwick, the man in the camo hat, was no longer shouting. He was pale. I was just concerned for safety, he stammered. He looked like a thug. You can't arrest me for caring about America. Sir, stand up, Miller said. No, I paid for this seat, Chadwick yelled, his courage returning as panic set in. You should be arresting him. He's the one with the secret papers. He's a spy. Chadwick made a mistake. He jumped up and shoved Sergeant Miller. It happened in a blur. Miller performed a leg sweep, and Chadwick hit the aisle carpet with a heavy thud. Stop resisting, Miller shouted. Get off me, Chadwick screamed. Click, click. The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut echoed through the cabin. Gregory Chadwick, you are under arrest for assault on a police officer and interference with flight operations, Miller recited. They hauled him up. His hat had fallen off, revealing a bald spot beaded with sweat. He was red-faced, crying and stumbling. As they dragged him down the aisle toward the front, he passed Adrian. You ruined my life, Chadwick screamed at Adrian, spit flying. You people always ruin everything. Adrian looked at him. He didn't sneer. He didn't smile. He simply adjusted his cufflinks. I didn't do anything, Mr. Chadwick, Adrian said softly. You did this to yourself. As Chadwick was hauled off the jet bridge, the entire economy cabin, the people who had been delayed, tired, and forced to listen to Chadwick's racist tirade, erupted into applause. The clapping started slow, then built into a roar. Even the teenage girl in row 4 was cheering. Captain Anderson turned to the remaining flight crew. Sarah, the junior attendant, was shaking in the corner. Sarah, Anderson said gently, can you handle the lead position? I think so, Captain, she stammered. Good. We are going to need a replacement for Brenda, but we'll get a reserve from the crew lounge. It will take 30 minutes. Close the door for now, so we can have some privacy. Anderson looked at Adrian. Dr. King, I know I have no right to ask this, but will you please stay on this flight? We will get you to D.C. as fast as this bird can fly. I'll push the throttle to the firewall. Adrian looked at the empty jet bridge. He looked at his bag, which Sarah had retrieved from the closet and placed gently in the overhead bin where it belonged. I have a patient waiting, Captain, Adrian said. I'll stay, but I need to make a phone call first. Anything you need, Anderson said. Adrian pulled out his phone. He didn't call his mother. He dialed a number from his contact list labeled General Silas Vance, Pentagon Ops. He put the phone to his ear. General, Adrian said when the line clicked open. It's Adrian. I'm going to be late for the briefing. No, the medical timeline is fine, but I've had a situation with the airline. Yes, United Flight 492. I think you might want to call the airline's CEO. Yes, I'll hold. The fallout was not a slow burn. It was a nuclear explosion. While Flight 492 sat at the gate waiting for a replacement flight attendant, the video from the girl in row 4 hit Twitter. Then Reddit. Then CNN. The hashtag number Dr. King was trending #1 in the United States within 20 minutes. The video was damning. It showed Brenda snatching the phone, It showed Chadwick screaming slurs. It showed the calm, dignified silence of Dr. King. And it showed the dramatic revelation of the badge. At the corporate headquarters of the airline in Chicago, just a few miles away, phones began to ring. And not just customer service phones. The private, red line phones on the executive floor. The CEO of the airline, a man named Jonathan Sterling, a coincidence of naming, perhaps, but a man of old money, was woken up at 11:30 p.m. by his chief legal officer. "We have a problem, John," the lawyer said. "A catastrophic problem." "What is it?" "A crash?" Sterling asked, sitting up in bed, heart pounding. "Worse, from a PR perspective. We just racially profiled the lead neurosurgeon for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And we did it on camera. And, John, the Pentagon just called." "The Pentagon?" General Vance. "He said that if Dr. King is not treated with the utmost deference immediately, the Department of Defense will review their travel contract with our airline. That contract is worth $4 billion a year, John." Sterling went cold. "Fix it. Give him everything. Refund the plane. Give him a private jet. Just fix it." Back on the plane, the atmosphere had shifted from hostile to reverent. The station manager for O'Hare, a woman named Patricia, came running down the jet bridge. She was out of breath. She boarded the plane and went straight to seat 1A. She looked like she was about to cry. "Dr. King," she gasped. "I am Patricia, the station manager. I am so incredibly sorry. I have just spoken to our headquarters. We are prepared to offer you a voucher for $10,000, and we would like to upgrade you to global services status immediately. We can also deplane you and put you on a private charter to DC right now." Adrian looked up from his iPad. He had returned to studying the brain scans. "I don't want your money, Patricia," Adrian said, "and I don't want a private jet. I want to arrive in DC on this flight as I planned. I want to do my job." Of course, Patricia nodded rapidly. "However," Adrian continued, taking off his glasses, "I will be requiring the full names and employee numbers of the gate agent and the former lead flight attendant for my report to the DoD. And I expect a formal, written apology sent to General McAllister's office by Monday morning. If it is not received, I will be speaking to the ACLU and my own legal counsel." "You will have it," Patricia promised. "Brenda has already been suspended pending termination. The gate agent has been pulled off the floor." "Good," Adrian said. "Now please, let the captain fly the plane." Patricia scurried away. Captain Anderson came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, our reserve crew member has arrived. We are pushing back in 2 minutes. Flight time will be a brisk 1 hour and 12 minutes. Drinks in the main cabin are on the house tonight." A cheer went up from economy. As the plane finally taxied out to the runway, Adrian looked out the window. He saw a police cruiser parked near the terminal. In the back seat, he could just make out the silhouette of a man in a camo hat, head bowed against the glass. Adrian felt no joy, just a weary satisfaction. The karma had hit hard, but the scar of the experience remained. He turned back to his file. The brain of the general was a complex landscape, a minefield of neurons and vessels. It was delicate work. It required precision, intelligence, and patience. Qualities, he mused, that were severely lacking in the world outside the operating room. The engines roared to life, pressing him back into the leather seat. As the wheels left the ground, leaving Chicago and its prejudices behind, Dr. King finally allowed himself to close his eyes. But the story wasn't over. The flight was just the beginning of the reckoning. Because when Dr. King landed in DC, there was a welcoming committee waiting. And it wasn't the one Brenda or the airline expected. The flight to Washington, D.C. was the smoothest Captain Robert Anderson had ever flown. It was as if the atmosphere itself had decided to apologize to the man in seat 1A. The winds were calm, the turbulence non-existent. Anderson pushed the Boeing 737 to its maximum safe cruising speed, shaving 20 minutes off the flight time. He wasn't just flying a plane. He was delivering a national asset. In the cabin, the mood was surreal. Sarah, the young flight attendant now acting as lead, moved through the aisles with a newfound confidence. She served Dr. King first, bringing him a bottle of sparkling water and a warm towel without him having to ask. Mr. Henderson, the man in 1B who had laughed at the duplicate booking comment earlier, was now visibly sweating. He kept glancing at Adrian, trying to make eye contact, perhaps to offer a silent apology, but Adrian's attention was entirely consumed by the medical files. He wasn't ignoring Henderson out of spite. Henderson simply no longer existed in his world. Adrian was deep in the preoperative visualization. He was tracing the path of the basilar artery, calculating the optimal angle of approach to the aneurysm. The petty squabbles of small-minded people had faded. The stakes he dealt with were life and death, not seating charts and luggage bins. As the plane began its descent into Reagan National Airport, the lights of the Capitol sprawled out below like a grid of golden circuitry. The Washington Monument glowed in the distance, a beacon of the ideals the city was supposed to represent, ideals that had been tested and tarnished in Chicago. But perhaps, Adrian hoped, not entirely broken. "Ladies and gentlemen," Captain Anderson's voice came over the PA, softer this time. "We are on final approach. I have been informed that we will be parking at gate 35. I ask that everyone remain seated until the seatbelt sign is turned off. And, on a personal note, thank you for your patience tonight. It has been an educational evening for us all." The landing was feather light. The tires kissed the tarmac with barely a bump. As the plane taxied to the gate, Adrian packed his files away. He checked his phone. He had a text from General Vance. "Team is ready. See you on the tarmac." Adrian frowned. Tarmac? Commercial flights usually deplaned via the jet bridge. The plane came to a halt. The seatbelt sign dinged off. Usually, this was the moment of chaos, passengers jumping up, grabbing bags, pushing into the aisle. But tonight, nobody moved. The passengers in economy stayed seated. They were waiting. They seemed to collectively understand that the man in 1A deserved to leave first. The cabin door opened, but it wasn't the gate agent who stepped on. It was a Marine. A sergeant in full dress blues dark coat with red trim, white belt, white gloves, and an NCO sword at his hip stepped onto the aircraft. He was young, sharp-jawed, and terrifyingly disciplined. He stood at the entrance of the cockpit, turned sharply to face seat 1A, and snapped a salute so crisp it sounded like a whip crack. "Dr. King, sir," the Marine barked. Adrian stood up. He grabbed his weekender bag from the bin. "At ease, Sergeant." "Sir, on behalf of the Office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, I am here to escort you to the medical transport. We have a convoy waiting." Mr. Henderson's jaw dropped. The teenage girl in row 4 gasped. This wasn't just VIP treatment. This was the kind of reception usually reserved for heads of state. "Thank you, Sergeant," Adrian said. He turned to the cockpit. Captain Anderson was standing there, his cap in his hand. "Dr. King," Anderson said, extending a hand. "It was an honor. And again, I am sorry." Adrian took the pilot's hand. The grip was firm. "You did the right thing in the end, Captain. That is what matters. Fly safe." Adrian turned to Sarah. "You handled yourself well under pressure," he told her. "I'll make sure to mention that in my report. The airline needs more people like you." Sarah beamed, tears welling in her eyes. "Thank you, Doctor." Adrian stepped off the plane, not into the jet bridge, but onto the metal stairs that had been rolled up to the side door. The Marine led the way. As Adrian descended the stairs to the tarmac, the cool night air of D.C. hit his face. And then he saw it. It wasn't just a car. It was a motorcade. 3 black SUVs with tinted windows were idling on the tarmac, their engines purring. Flanking them were 2 MP, military police, motorcycles with lights flashing silently. Standing beside the middle SUV was a man in a beige trench coat and a woman in army fatigues holding a tablet. But what caught Adrian's eye, and the eyes of every passenger pressing their faces against the terminal windows above, was the group of 4 men standing at attention near the rear vehicle. They were wearing civilian clothes, but some things you can't hide. The posture, the prosthetics, the scars. They were veterans. Former patients. One of them, a man missing his left leg below the knee, leaned on a cane. This was Sergeant Major Thomas Miller, RET. A man whose spine Adrian had reconstructed 3 years ago after an IED blast in Kandahar. Miller had been told he would never stand again. Tonight, he was standing. Adrian walked across the tarmac, the wind whipping his blazer. "Thomas?" Adrian called out, his professional mask slipping for the first time into a genuine smile. "What are you doing here at this hour?" Miller grinned. "Heard you had a rough flight, Doc. Heard some folks forgot who the hell you were." We thought we'd come remind him. Adrian laughed, a rich, warm sound that finally released the tension of the last 4 hours. He embraced Miller, then shook hands with the other men, a former Navy SEAL who Adrian had treated for a traumatic brain injury, and 2 Army Rangers who owed their mobility to his hands. "You didn't have to do this," Adrian said, looking at the group. "You saved our lives, Doc," the SEAL said. "Least we can do is give you a ride to work." General Vance, the man in the trench coat, stepped forward. He was a sharp-eyed man with graying temples. "Dr. King, good to see you. We have the operating theater prepped. But first," Vance gestured to the terminal building above them. Adrian looked up. The entire glass wall of Gate 35 was lined with people. The passengers from his flight, the gate agents, random travelers. They were all watching the scene on the tarmac below. The black SUVs, the Marines, the flashing lights, and the Black Doctor being greeted like a war hero by the very soldiers he had saved. Vance handed Adrian a secure satellite phone. "The White House Chief of Staff wants a word before you scrub in." They saw the video. "The president is displeased with United Airlines." Adrian took the phone. "I'll speak to him on the way." "Let's move out," the Marine sergeant barked. The door to the middle SUV was held open for Adrian. He tossed his bag inside the bag that Brenda had tried to check, the bag that held the future of neural interface technology. He climbed in. As the motorcade peeled away, sirens chirping to clear the path through the airfield gates, Adrian looked back one last time at the plane. Inside the terminal, looking down from the window, was the replacement gate agent. And standing next to a police officer, watching her career drive away in a black government SUV, was Brenda. She had been released by the airport police pending charges, just in time to see the consequences of her actions unfold in real time. She watched the motorcade sweep across the tarmac, lights blazing, unstoppable. She saw the respect. She saw the power. And she realized, with a sinking, nauseous feeling in her stomach, that the suspicious man she had tried to belittle was a man who rebuilt heroes. She turned away from the window, hiding her face as people in the terminal began to point and whisper. She was famous now, but not in the way she had ever wanted. The operating room at Walter Reed was bright and sterile. The hum of the ventilator was the only sound. "Clamps," Adrian said softly. A nurse placed them in his hand instantly. "Sutures. Micro-scissors." Adrian worked with the steady hands of a master pianist. He was reattaching a severed nerve cluster in the lumbar spine of a 22-year-old lieutenant who had taken shrapnel in Syria. "And done," Adrian whispered. "Close him up." He stepped back, peeling off his gloves. He was exhausted, but satisfied. The lieutenant would walk. It would take a year of rehab, but he would walk. Adrian walked out to the scrub room, washing his hands with the familiar ritualistic motions. He dried them and walked to his locker. He checked his phone. New email, Department of Justice. Subject: Settlement Agreement. United Airlines versus King. Adrian opened it. The airline had settled. The terms were confidential, but they included a mandatory, company-wide overhaul of their bias training protocols, overseen by a board appointed by the NAACP. They also included a $10 million donation to the Veterans Brain Injury Foundation, a charity Adrian sat on the board of. And there was a personal note attached from the new VP of In-Flight Services. "Dr. King, we wanted to inform you that the employee, Brenda, redacted, is no longer with the company. Mr. Gregory Chadwick has been sentenced to 2 years of probation and a lifetime ban from all commercial air travel. We hope to one day earn back your trust." Adrian deleted the email. He didn't need their trust. He needed to focus. He changed into his street clothes, jeans, fresh sneakers, and a hoodie. He put on his headphones. He walked out of the hospital into the bright D.C. afternoon. He walked to the curb where a taxi was waiting. He didn't take a limo. He didn't take a motorcade. He just took a cab. As he got in, the driver, an older Ethiopian man, looked in the rearview mirror. "Where to, sir?" "Home," Adrian said. "Georgetown." The driver squinted at him. "Hey, you look familiar. You that doctor? The one from the plane video?" Adrian smiled. He looked out the window at the cherry blossoms blooming along the Potomac. "No," Adrian said softly. "I'm just a guy trying to get some sleep." He closed his eyes as the cab merged into traffic. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a victim. He was just a doctor. And tomorrow, there was another patient waiting. The story of Dr. Adrian King reminds us that prejudice is not just a moral failing. It is a dangerous blinder that prevents us from seeing the true value of the human beings standing right in front of us. Brenda and Chadwick saw a stereotype. Captain Anderson, eventually, saw a man. But the veterans on the tarmac? They saw a savior. In a world quick to judge based on appearance, hoodie, or skin color, true character often carries a badge that isn't visible until you look closely enough to see the gold underneath. Dr. King didn't need to shout to prove his worth. His work, his dignity, and the lives he saved shouted for him. Karma didn't just strike back, it educated. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do when the world tries to make you small is to stand tall and do your job. If this story had you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people with stories that matter. What would you have done if you were in Dr. King's shoes? Would you have kept your cool, or would you have lost it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you want more stories about instant karma, dramatic twists, and justice being served, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.